Um, Not a lot right now.
Ireland.
I think I scared everybody off last week.
Yeah.
Was that bad, huh?
You know, I think it was great. Yeah. Like Jerry.
I showered and everything, a little deodorant. I worked out this morning.
Nice day.
You know what? So I started working out with a trainer before COVID, and then during COVID, I stopped going to the gym because I didn't want to go to the gym. And then my trainer built a gym in his garage. And that was perfect. So now I go to the gym one day a week and I go to his house one day a week. And depending on the time of year, working on his garage can be beautiful, like it was this morning. You know, it was like low 70s, it was magnificent. But in the summertime, it's sticky, it's hot, especially, and it's nice, it's because it's darker, so the sun doesn't come up, so it's not as hot in the morning. Because I'm usually there by 7. And then your daughter joins me at 7:30.
As well, they should. They're out there working.
That's good. All right, so hello to everybody. For those who are online and those who are here with us, I'm glad you're back. Hope everybody had good holidays. Chag Sameach for Sukkot. We had an amazing Erev Simchat Torah celebration with many hundreds of people to celebrate our new religious school students and the gift of Torah, but a very special commemoration to honor the return of the hostages from their captivity. And Rabbi Haas imagined a tribute to the Nova Dance Festival that was really, really special. And people stayed and danced for a long time. It was really, really very good. So this is supposedly lunch and learn. I don't see a single person eating lunch. Lauren has, like, if a bar is the best lunch that you can bring, like, oh God, what do you have? You have a bar. Are we fighting it out for a bar? You had a cup of yogurt? You had a chef salad. All right, well, that helps. That I have to tell you, you know, I'm the one who initiated Lunch and Learn at Temple Bethel in 1996 when I was the assistant rabbi. And I will tell you, back then, people had pastrami sandwiches and corned beef and pizza, sushi. There was some really high quality lunches that people were bringing, and now I don't even see people making it like not even like a tuna sandwich or a salad, God forbid. A bar. Wow, Steve, what are you eating at home?
Nothing yet, after we finish.
Strike 3, you're out. It does include learning and lunch. You bring the lunch, we bring the learning. It's a partnership. This is a covenantal, as we'll learn today, experience. So I have nothing to say. So that actually gives us a few more minutes of learning because I don't have time to evaluate and judge your lunch. So you all failed, okay? So there you go. I hope whatever you're doing after our class will be absolutely delicious. Okay. So just to review, I'm gonna stop my share for 10 seconds, but I was very happy about my little intro slide, so I'm sharing that. Just to review, okay, see if what we retained from last week. What is the project of modern Jewish thought, modern Jewish theology? What is that whole enterprise designed to do?
How to live a Jewish life in this time.
How to live a Jewish life in this time, okay? But that implies that one is going to live in this time how? Jewishly and not Jewishly, right? The Satmars in Brooklyn are living Jewishly in this time, but what are they not really doing?
Participating.
They're not participating in modernity. Yeah.
I wanna know how to get my son to live any kind of Jewish life. He was brought up in this temple, he was bar mitzvahed here, and he went off.
The answer is you can't get him at this stage in his life to do anything, right? He needs to be inspired to do this for himself. Okay, so yes, so if one to engage Jewishly, live Jewishly, and as a modern, as opposed to walling oneself off from modernity, that is the project of modern Jewish living. And thus, modern Jewish thought is how do I create for myself a philosophy of Judaism, of which theology is an essential part, a way of thinking of the divine that makes sense and is compelling without surrendering the commitments I have to the modern world. Can someone tell me one commitment that makes us modern? One idea, a value set, whatever it might be, however you would describe it, that makes you a modern person? Yes.
Inclusivity.
Okay, an idea of inclusivity, meaning I'm not going to only look at one kind of idea. I'm willing to look outside the boundaries of my normal library for other ideas. When I say other library, because we as Jews, of course, are a textual tradition, and the intertextuality is a big piece of modernity. When I say intertextuality, that's not just how the Shulchan Aruch relates to the Torah, relates to Maimonides, relates to the Gemara, relates to the Mishnah.
Different class.
Right? That's Jewish intertextuality. We're going to use that word, if not this week, next week. But it's also, how does my traditions relate to what our Christian friends are learning in their texts, what our Muslim friends are learning in their texts, what our Buddhist friends are learning in their texts, and not just religious texts, but what other kinds of texts? Secular texts, right? How does what we say relate to what Malcolm Gladwell writes about, right? Or what Jonathan Haidt is writing about, or what Immanuel Kant or Martin Buber or the Dalai Lama is writing about, right? Intertextuality. Good. What else is something that makes a modern person a modern person? Yes.
Women's equity?
Okay, the idea of equality. All right, certain ideas that became that the idea of the absolute right and eternal, I should say, ultimate value of an individual. So if every individual is of infinite value, if my life is of infinite value, if Fran's life is of infinite value, and Dervana's life is of infinite value, what can we say about all of our lives?
Equal.
They are of equal value, irrespective of all the different ways in which human beings sort themselves by language, by religion, by gender, by race, by ethnicity, by language, by whatever it might be, the stupid ways that human beings choose to separate and categorize themselves. We believe that none of those distinctions diminishes the essential rights of a human being. Good. What else? How did we come to that idea? That it shouldn't matter all those things.
Education?
Well, education brings it forward, but what else? Reason. Right? I can take a look, right? Dervana is a dark-skinned person, I'm a light-skinned person. Okay? If we were to take our DNA and throw it on a slide, right? There's virtually no difference between Dervana's DNA and my DNA. Right?
Yep.
We're the same organism, more or less, even though he has much darker skin and I have lighter skin. Makes no difference, right? If you were to take Fran's DNA and my DNA and throw it on a slide, there's virtually no difference, even though she is a woman and I'm a man, right? We could do this all day long, but you get the idea. Science, reason, logic. We are not willing to surrender such things, right? on the altar of a pure commitment to Judaism. So Jewish thought, modern Jewish thought, of which Rabbi Marmur is a practitioner, though he will tell you, as we'll learn perhaps a little bit today, if not next week, that he is not just a modern Jewish thinker, he's a postmodern Jewish thinker. We'll talk a little bit about the difference between what was modernity and what is postmodernity, which is really more true of the epoch in which we've lived since the 1990s. There are many who would say the advent of what we would call the digital age. There's a rabbi named Danny Schiff, who was our guest last year as our scholar in residence. In his remarkable book, Judaism in the Digital Age, argues very convincingly to me that the world kind of shifted in the 1990s with the advent of these things. And our interconnectivity and the internet and all that has sort of emerged from the digital age and social media and all the different ways that we connect for good, bad, or different. That age may be coming to an end very rapidly, or certainly evolving much more quickly than we're used to because of the advent of AI, and that's a whole other conversation for a whole other class. Okay, so so I just want to make sure that we're all clear on like what the project is, right? Because it's not only just how do I live a Jewish life in modernity without surrendering a commitment to Judaism, or without surrendering a commitment to modernity and all that modernity means. The autonomy of the individual rights of a person, the commitment to logic and reason, equality, and those kinds of things. How do I wed that to Judaism? And at the same time, how do I wed that to a belief in God that doesn't make me surrender either of those commitments either? How do I figure out a formulation of what the divine can be without saying that science doesn't exist, right? I can have a belief in God and at the same time acknowledge that the universe is somewhere around 20 billion years old, right? I can believe in the gift of the Torah as a divine work and not necessarily believe that this week's Torah portion is a science text, right? So all of these sort of meta questions are what's animating Rabbi Marmur's career, his life, his soul, and his book. How many of you went and ordered the book? Well, how do you think this man's going to live, right? First of all, he doesn't make much money on his books. He makes his money from the Hebrew Union College, and let me tell you, he's not making much money from that either. Go buy his book. It's called Living the Letters by Palmgrave Macmillan. Okay, I'll give you another week, and I just have to. He's a friend. I have to tell him I was hawking the book. It's called Living the Letters. Living the Letters. And you're gonna meet him in 3 or 4 weeks, so you know.
You can sign the book.
He A can sign your book, and he can't sign it if you don't buy it, and B, you wanna look him in the face and say, I was so excited you came, I ordered your book. And he's gonna say, thank you, I earned 25 cents, but or whatever he earns.
Wise living to census. So, how do you read to this?
It's tough, friend. I've got 15 books on my bedside, just chip away at them along the way. All right, back to our story, okay? So the two main influences for Rabbi Marmur, in addition to his father, who, as we talked about last week, is a very well-known Reform rabbi who started in Eastern Europe, made his way to London, where Michael was born and raised, and then for a long time was the senior rabbi of Holy Blossom Synagogue in Toronto. But Michael was influenced really by two major thinkers. One was Gene Borowitz, who we talked a little bit about last time, and the second is Abraham Joshua Heschel, which we're going to get into a little bit more. So, what Borowitz writes about, and Borowitz is a product, he is the quintessential Reform modern Jewish thinker who draws Reform Jewish thought into postmodernity. And we'll talk about what that means. But if modernity is about things like equality and rationality, autonomy, freedom, the idea that there is an historical development to ideas, all of those things, how do I formulate an authentic Jewish response to that?
What do you mean by authentic?
Meaning, like, without creating a new religion. How do I still embrace Torah still embrace some idea of halakha, right? Still embrace the corpus of Jewish textual and ritual tradition, and at the same time feel like I'm still living in the modern world. So, for example, the biggest question that we have as Reform Jews, right, is there's this thing called mitzvah. What is a mitzvah? Yes. No, it is not a good deed. It is an obligation. It is a commandment. Now, Fran just gave it away because she is a Reformed Jew and a good-looking one, right? But Reformed Jews say mitzvot are good deeds. Why do Reformed Jews call mitzvot good deeds?
You don't feel obligated to do them.
Because we don't necessarily feel obligated to do them from an external force, right? A good deed is something you choose to do from within, that you don't necessarily have to do, but you choose to, and that's what makes it a good deed. Question, is tzedakah, giving charity, a good deed, or is it an obligation?
Obligation.
How many of you live your life that way? Where you give whether you want to or not? All right, well, that's good. Right? There are a lot of people whom we have conversations with all the time who call us and they say, we are no longer going to maintain our membership at Temple Bethel. And we say, oh, did we piss you off? And they say, no, we love Temple Bethel. We think Temple Bethel is great. We don't use it.
Like a subscription to Netflix.
Right. And because I don't use it, I'm not going to pay for it. Right? They don't see synagogue membership thus, or these membership, I don't think it's because they're going to join somewhere else. Right? If somebody said, I'm relinquishing my membership at Temple Bethel because we want to go join this other synagogue we like better, where the rabbi is smarter and better looking. Great. Go. Be happy. Find the synagogue. Right? But when people say, I'm relinquishing my membership in the synagogue, I don't intend to join anywhere else, what they're saying is synagogue membership is a good deed. Right? But I don't feel obligated. Right? I don't use it. Right? There's a difference there. Not to castigate those people, they're just not living an orthodox experience of what commandedness is. Commandedness is, right? Reformed Jews don't locate the commander outside of ourselves. Where do Reformed Jews locate the commander?
Inside.
Inside. Because we believe in individual autonomy and human freedom. We are modern. And so as moderns, we relocate the source of moral authority from external to internal. What used to be the external moral authorities that used to be compelling for not just Jews, but everybody?
Religion.
Religion. The Pope said, this is what's right and wrong. And so if you're Catholic, you do what the Pope says, whether you agree or disagree. Okay? What if I'm not Catholic? What if I'm Jewish?
The rabbi.
You're a rabbi. Now, is the rabbi the moral authority like the Pope is?
No.
No.
Dang.
But it could be your parents or.
No, but they're not the moral authority, they're the guilt givers. They're totally different things.
It's that far.
Totally
It's not
different
that
things,
far.
right? The guilt givers, Catholics have the same issue, right?
Yes.
If you think Jewish mothers are tough, try Catholic mothers. Okay? Ask my brother-in-law about that. He'll tell you. Nuns, in particular, very, very talented in wielding the guilt weapon, right? But in the Catholic Church, the Pope is speaking for God. What does the rabbi do?
Leading us to God.
Leading you to God, because God is found in the book. And if you want to know what God wants of you, study the book. It's all in the book. In Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Ben Bagbag, who has the best name of anyone in the Talmud,
Yes.
right?
That would
Says,
be-
turn it again, because afochba v'afocha dechoba. Turn it over again, because everything is in it. Everything is in it, right? So Jews locate for thousands of years moral authority in God, external to themselves. But the pathway to learning what it is that God demands of you is external to yourself. It's in the book. What if I can't read the book?
It'll be sent to you.
Rabbi will translate.
Get a what?
Get it on audio.
Get it on audio. Which is exactly how they did, right? They would go to shiurim. They would go to the rabbi's lectures.
Come to Torah study.
They would get right. They couldn't read, but the rabbi would tell them, right? So if you don't know what the law is, that doesn't mean you're not bound by it. You just need to go find someone who will tell you what to do. Has that changed in the Orthodox world? No. No. My sister-in-law was often pregnant during Yom Kippur. She did not believe she herself had the right to determine whether she fasted in her pregnancy or not. Who had the authority to tell her whether or not she could or should fast?
The rabbi.
Her rabbi. She called her rabbi. And she said, I'm X weeks, should I fast? And he would either say yes or no. And she would do what the rabbi told her. She did not believe, still doesn't, that she has the authority to determine those things for herself. Years ago, we were in Jerusalem. And my sister-in-law was there with my niece. And I said, I was there studying. And I said, hey, why don't we meet for dinner? She said, great. I know they're Orthodox. This is also Jerusalem. I picked a kosher restaurant. There aren't in Jerusalem, there are plenty of non-kosher restaurants, but I obviously chose one that was kosher. She went inside, she said, oh, is this place kosher? I go, Donna, of course it's kosher, right? She's like, I don't know. It's not on my rabbi's list. Let me go in and see their certificate. So she went in, she looked, they have a certificate from the chief rabbi of Jerusalem. I go down and pick a restaurant, right? She's not able, in her concept of Judaism, she's not empowered to make her own choice as to what's kosher or not, what's permissible or not. That exists outside of herself, okay? Now she's a modern person, drives a Lexus, right? Works as an occupational therapist, has raised 5 beautiful children, now a bunch of grandchildren. She's, my sister-in-law, she's lovely, right? But her moral computation is not modern, except to certain degrees. So there are times when she won't cover her hair,
Oh, she just come from a meeting.
right? Now, when she's out in her synagogue community, she will cover her hair. And when she's doing other things, but there's times when she's around the house, she won't cover her hair. Even if there's company. Like, I've seen her without her hair covered. But in an Orthodox context, your brother-in-law should not see you. But I mean, we've known each other for 30 whatever years, and she's, she didn't grow up that way. So there's all kinds of ways in which people try to figure these things out. So Borowitz says, well, if my moral authority comes from within me, where does the idea of covenant come from? What does covenant mean?
It's contract.
Say it again.
Contract.
A contract, yeah,
Yeah, between God and yourself. Or
Right.
Jerusalem. People.
say it again.
It's a breed.
A breed, covenant means breed, yeah. So a covenant is an agreement that has a start date and no end date. Not like a lease, right, or a contract. A covenant is supposed to be forever, right? When we get married, we don't say, I promise to be married to you for the next 5 years, after which we will renegotiate.
Some of us do.
Well, that's fine.
Right?
There's something.
When you embark on the marriage, the idea is it's supposed to last forever. It doesn't always, but that's not the idea when you start, right? Covenants can be broken, but the expectation is they're eternal, right? So he's asking a really important question, which is, can I, from a place within, feel a sense of commanded obligation to live my life as a Jew from within as opposed to from the outside? And he calls that the dialectic between the covenantal duty, which is the authority of the tradition, and the Jewish self's autonomy, which is our conscience. Okay, I'll give you an example. Raise your hand if you at times observe Shabbat.
In which way do you mean observe Shabbat?
I mean, in whatever way you define Shabbat observance. Okay? And I know those of you who are online do the same.
I like them.
Okay, because I see you here from time to time. Okay? So, tell me why you observe Shabbat. Yeah, Lauren,
I don't shop on Shabbat.
that's how you observe. Why?
What do you do? I'm thinking about
Meaningful.
Shabbat.
Because you say it's Shabbat and I don't do that on Shabbat. Okay, good. Yes, Spencer.
God commanded me to do some Shabbat things like Torah study and services.
God says keep Shabbat and make it holy, and you're gonna do that. Yes.
I mean, I'm not the greatest at keeping Shabbat, I used to, but I think it's more to just take a moment to make a distinction between that 24-hour period and the rest of the week.
Okay, to make a distinction between that 24-hour period, right? So there's two different reasons why people might observe Shabbat. Reason one is the Torah says so. Okay? The second reason might be logically, rationally, Shabbat's a good idea. I need a rest. It gives me different perspective. It's good for my blood pressure, right? There's all different kinds of practical, logical, rational reasons why someone might say, I observe Shabbat. And another reason is I'm Jewish and I'm duty bound to observe Shabbat. And doing those things on Shabbat may give me ancillary benefits, but that's not why I do it. I do it because I feel compelled by a covenant that says keep Shabbat and make it holy. And that's really what Borowitz is trying to talk about in the idea of covenantal theology. Trying to figure out this conversation between the authority of the tradition and my conscience. I'll give you the best example I ever heard of this dialectic. Rabbi Lawrence Kushner, I've told this story before. If you haven't heard this story, thank God you came today. If you have heard it, it's still a good story, and good stories can be repeated.
Absolutely.
Rabbi Kushner was the rabbi of the Sudbury congregation for many, many years. And so living in Boston with someone on a limited income, what was a very important pilgrimage that he would make a few times a year?
Baseball.
Not baseball, no one can afford that.
Freedom Trail?
Not the Freedom Trail, but that's an important patriotic duty. Filene's. Filene's. For those of you who are not familiar with Boston, right, there was a discount store called Filene's Basement, where department stores would hand over on consignment the clothes they couldn't sell, and Filene's would hold on to them for a month, and each week they'd mark them down further. You could get some good bargains that way of stuff that hadn't sold in department stores. Okay. Yeah, there are a lot of people that copied it, right? So Rabbi Kushner is about my size, okay? He's, you know, short and thin. And so finding clothes that would fit was not always easy. So he happened to be schlepping through the aisles and he found a beautiful blazer. And he put it on and it fit perfectly. And he couldn't believe, because he never finds anything that fits, because us short, diminutive guys don't always find things in our size. And he looks at the tag and it's a triple markdown. Hooray! Right? Grabs it, heads to the checkout counter where, of course, there's a long line of bargain hunters ready to purchase their treasures. And while he's waiting in line, he happens to look at the label. And it says 95% wool, 5% linen. Now, for those of you who have been regulars in Torah study, you know that one of the things you're not allowed to do is wear a garment that is mixed with wool and linen together. In Hebrew, it's called shatnez. It's forbidden. The Torah doesn't explain why you can't wear wool and linen together. The rabbis sort of play with this a little bit to try to divine an answer if they can. But the fact is, the Torah says you can't wear a garment with wool and linen together. And now he is faced with Borowitz's dialectic in real time, right? While online at Philene's. Because on the one hand, he is a modern, right? And as a modern, he says, this fits, and it's beautiful, and it's a triple markdown. And his covenantal piece says, it's shatnez, I can't wear that. What do? Now, some people would say, well, duh. No one's gonna know, right? I've worked here for 21 years as the senior rabbi. In all 21 years, I've never had a congregant come and say, can I see the label on your jacket? They've asked me all kinds of other personal questions and gotten into my personal space on any number of occasions. But they've never asked to see the label on my jacket. Who knew? No, wait. Put it back. I know it's crushing it. He put it back. Why did he put it back? He says, because I have a covenant. That's what Borowitz would call covenantal theology, right? Where you live this way because you're asked to. So Borowitz writes the following. He says, I think it's only an understatement to say that in our day, the self-confidence of humanism is ludicrous. Secularity no longer is self-assured and triumphant. If anything, its moral collapse has been so thoroughgoing that it threatens to destroy whatever little faith in humankind we can still manage to muster. What he's saying is, for people who just throw in with modernity, modernity has not proved to be the best moral authority you can find. One need only look at the erosion in confidence in the institutions which used to have much more moral authority in life. That, for example, right, if you look at the number of Americans who trusted the US Congress to do the right thing, compare 1955 to 2025.
Want to do that?
Right? The erosion in confidence has crumbled. The erosion in confidence in the academy has crumbled. The erosion of confidence in the moral authority of scientists has crumbled, right? Look at, if you think about the difference between how America would have responded to COVID in 1955 versus 2025. It's astounding, right? In 1955, if they said there's a virus out there, it's gonna kill you, do A, B, and C, everyone would have done A, B, and C, and they wouldn't have questioned, they wouldn't have asked. And then they said, tell me what else to do. The idea that somebody in their own authority would say, I'm not wearing a mask. I'm not separating. I disagree, right? You disagree with me? That it would have been in 1955, people would have done that?
I think people would have questioned in 1955 as well.
Not nearly the same way they would today.
I think they would have asked, how do I do it better?
Not nearly in the same way that, but it's just the way in which people trusted scientists back then versus the way they trust scientists today. There's been an erosion in confidence. And part of that is because you had people who were the greatest scientific minds in World War II who thought it was perfectly morally acceptable to kill Jewish children, right? You had, some of the great, scientific minds who thought, dumping napalm on people in the jungle in Vietnam was acceptable, right? There's all different kinds of ways in which we could explore sort of how postmodernity came. Yeah, Lauren.
That was what I was really responding to, that, after World War II, with all the experimentation, I just think that there was a lot of,
You're right, but it took a while for that skepticism to bleed into the system.
okay,
You're right about that. But
that's what I was trying.
those kinds of things like Mengele, right, and others bleed into this system, but it takes a long time for that to happen. It takes decades. So, furthermore, Borowitz writes, if Jews could confront their Judaism as Jewish selves and not as autonomous persons in general, I contend that they would find Jewish law and law the single best source of guidance as to how they ought to live. The fact is, as Jews, if you want to choose, right, instead of just saying, look, I'm a human being, I'm an autonomous human being, I have an entire array of moral traditions that I could follow. But if you think of yourself as, well, I'm part of the Jewish people, my tradition is good at this. And rooted in Israel's corporate faithfulness to God, they would want their lives substantially structured by their people's understanding of how its past, present, and future should shape their daily existence. I was listening to an interview with hostage Elisha Rabbi, whose testimony of his experience was translated recently into English, a book called Hostage, and he's been doing interviews and out there, incredibly brave man. Survived 491 days. And he talked about how, as a secular Israeli, Shabbat meant something in the tunnel. They would deliberately save a little bit of their meager ration of pita. And they were given like a pita and a quarter a day. But they would, on Fridays, they would save that quarter so they could make a motzi on however they determined it was night. And they would save a little water from the little bit of water they were given to make a kiddush.
Yeah.
Because there was something about sanctifying Shabbat that brought meaning to their lives. Now, obviously, no one was checking to see, right? But there was something in their own, right, inner compulsion as Jews to say, I'm going to do this Jewish thing because I need to sanctify some measure of this existence. And so, in addition to Borowitz, Rabbi Marmur is also deeply influenced by Abraham Joshua Heschel. And this is not only a major influence on his life, this is the subject of his doctoral dissertation, which he also published as a book. So Heschel looks at things from a very different but also modern perspective. So Borowitz is looking at this really through a rationalist's lens, right? There is this inner compulsion to lead life as a Jew, but it's a thinking choice. Heschel looks at the choice to live in a religious way in a non-rational. That doesn't mean irrational, okay? A non-rational. So, for example, Bobby, do you love your husband?
Yes,
You do?
most of the time.
Most of the time. That's good.
He's not on there.
He's not watching today, so we can talk about this. Okay? Can you tell me the rational reasons why you love Jack?
No, well, I could give you some, but that's not, I mean, he's kind, he's honest, he's caring, he's compassionate, he's forgiving.
Yeah, but so's Alan, and you don't love him,
Well, that's the not rational part.
right? There's something there, right? The connections that we have, right? I love my kids. I love them more than your kids.
It's,
And I love lots of kids.
it's prime.
I've got, you know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of kids who've rolled through my confirmation class. I write them college recommendations. I do all kinds of things. I love them. I'm not buying their health insurance. I'm not paying for them to go to college, right? I don't love them like I love my kids. Now, that doesn't mean that they're smarter than my kids or less worthy of love than my kids. I've got a connection to these kids. I can't tell you why, right? Even rationally, I can say, well, because I've known them since they were in utero. We all know that that's hooey, right? There's something that's not rational, but real, that defines familial love, that defines romantic love, that defines all kinds of ways in which we build human connection.
There are many yous, there are many you and your wife. And the other kids.
If
are
you
not.
knew that, you would know that's not true, right? I mean, they share some of our genes, right? But Ari and I are very different kinds of human beings. And Meredith and I are very different kinds of human beings. And Ellie is a little bit more like me, but she wouldn't admit to it, right? So, I mean, but it is who it is. So Heschel takes a look at the way in which someone can go through life. And he has a concept that he calls radical amazement. Radical amazement sort of takes a look at things and says, well, yes, as a modern, I can understand through rational logic, scientific thought, why things are the way they are. But that doesn't mean they can't also touch my soul. So when I was in college, I was dating the daughter of one of the biology professors at Colgate. And Dr. Novak was an ornithologist. And he was an unbelievable teacher. I never took a class with him, but I just sat across the table from him, and he loved birds. I mean, loved birds. And he was also a very religious Episcopalian. And I was at the time starting to learn and explore my own religion in a more sophisticated way in college. And I said, well, Dr. Novak, you're a scientist. Explain to me your religious commitments. I didn't use that language. I'm sure I said it the way a 20-year-old would. And he said, oh, you don't understand. The more I learn about these birds, the more religious I become.
Right.
The more, and he didn't use these words, but what he was explaining was radical amazement. Now, he understood the biology and the neurology and all of the ologies about birds, but that didn't mean it didn't touch his soul. And the reason why Heschel's concept of radical amazement matters to a modern has to do with the importance of having your soul touched on a regular basis. So if I'm a modern, which means the locus of moral authority is in me, why is it important that I cultivate my capacity to be amazed?
Because it's outside of yourself. When you're amazed of something which is outside of you.
All right, I take something that is outside of me, and what do? I bring it in, right? What is another word for amazement? Inspiration. And if you take the word inspiration, what is inspiration? Inspiriting. Right? taking something from the spiritual world or spiritual experience and inning it, right? Bringing it into me so that it generates energy within me, right? So when someone is inspired to do something, why do they do it? It's because something touched their soul that generated the energy that propelled that person forward. And so if I am incapable of being amazed, then what am I also incapable of?
Spirituality.
Spirituality, but then also moral action.
Well, not necessarily, moral action, not necessarily.
Autonomous moral action. Now,
Still.
he would,
when
we'll
faced
go a
with
little
challenge,
deeper with it.
but still.
right? He said there are three ways, Marmur explains that there are three ways to understand a religious truth. One is I can observe nature. Okay? Another is revelation. Right?
What's revelation in this context?
Torah. Torah and all of the discoveries through Torah. Ways in which God let us in on the secret. And then the third is holy deeds. Yeah, Andrea.
Would you say, like with nature and even perhaps revelation and maybe holy deeds, these could be nonverbal because you say they touch your heart, they touch your soul. It's an inner experience that the individual is feeling that connects them, I guess, with radical amazement or God or everything about Judaism. Sometimes you can't even put it in words
Right.
versus logic and rational conversation. Even though the revelation could come from the Torah, it's the words that somehow touch your heart that somehow go beyond describing, or they're almost indescribable.
Right. So what you're kind of touching on a little bit, Andrea, is what we might call mystical experience. So mystical experience is asking a different question, right? Which I explored on Rosh Hashanah, right? What's the number one question that you asked? Let's see if anyone was listening on Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, God's knocking, right?
Yeah.
Which means, how do I answer? By doing the next right thing, right? What's the number one question that Jews ask? What do I do now? The number one question Jews ask is, what do I do now? A mystic would say the best way to learn how to answer that question is if I knew what God was, I would better understand what God wants. So a mystic tries to understand what God is, not just what God commands or demands. You need to look for the hidden reality in the seemingly ordinary. Heschel says this is the natural way to do things. Look how children look at the world. Simple things are amazing to children. They look at things that we find mundane with wide-eyed fascination and awe. The problem, he says, is that modernity has taught us to repress our instinctive awe at the world and our part in it. We see things that are flat out amazing and we're like, yeah, so? So for example, how many of you went to get a flu shot? How many of you went to get a flu shot were blown away that there is such a thing called inoculation? Like, went to CVS or your doctor, got the shot and said, oh my God, thank God they've discovered vaccine. Yeah, maybe that one, right?
I was shocked at it.
Especially the speed with which they developed it, right? The fact that we've only known about inoculations for a couple hundred years, less. How many of you drove here today? How many of you were blown away by the concept of a combustion engine or an electric motor that could propel an automobile across miles in comfort with surround sound?
Surround sound
We
is
take
pretty
it for
good.
granted, we got it.
Right?
We take this for granted.
He would say, what's wrong with you? Scientific inquiry has taught us an unnatural skepticism. He says, then we will, if we can develop this sense of awe and wonder, he says, then we will once again ask with a higher sense of wonder, why is there anything at all? Why is it so wondrous? Why do we human beings have this astonishing power to ask and to marvel, to appreciate? That's what Heschel calls radical amazement. Now, argument and analysis are important, right? But they're not going to evoke awe. And awe, which touches our soul, also propels us to act. Yeah.
This is reminding me of the story I told you of I was in the Galapagos at the equator, and at night, I went up on top deck and looked out at the stars, and it's like the place that you can see the Southern Cross and the Northern Star and the Orion all in one place. And I was marveling at that.
And on deck of the ship, you can see what you can't see in the city, right?
But I could see the Northern and Southern at the same time, and in the middle of that awe, a shooting star went by. Now, I thought that was something amazing. But, do you remember what you said to me when I told you that story?
Tell everybody.
You said that was a gift.
It was, right?
God gave you a gift. I just wanted to retell
Right.
that story because it was so beautiful that your reply was something that I haven't forgotten.
So what, in a very famous passage, Heschel is reflecting on prayer, and he's talking about, right, if I can have a concept, if I can have the experience of radical amazement, right? When you get a gift, right? What is the natural response to a gift?
Thank you.
Gratitude.
Yes.
Gratitude, right? And prayer, Heschel would say, which is a particularly Jewish thing to do, is to regain a sense of the mystery that animates all beings, the divine margin in all attainments. Prayer is our humble answer to the inconceivable surprise of living. It is all we can offer in return for the mystery by which we live. Who is worthy to be present at the constant unfolding of time? Amidst the meditation of the mountains, the humility of flowers, wiser than all alphabets, clouds that die constantly for the sake of God's glory, we are hating, hunting, hurting. Suddenly we feel, he's writing this during Vietnam. Suddenly we feel ashamed of our clashes and complaints, but he could have written this in the 50s too, right? Suddenly we feel ashamed of our clashes and complaints in the face of the tacit glory of nature. It is so embarrassing to live. How strange we are in the world and how presumptuous our doings. Only one response can maintain us: gratefulness for witnessing the wonder, for the gift of our unearned right to serve, to adore, to fulfill. It is gratefulness which makes the soul great. What I love about Heschel is this is his fourth language.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Right? His English eloquence is so amazing, and it's his fourth language. Right? So what Heschel is saying, right, is if I can fill my heart up that great, if I can amplify my soul, I'm going to better know what to do. And the pathway, he would say, to cultivating that sense of awe and wonder is Jewish practice, Torah study. For example, right? None of you brought lunch, but had you, right? You might have said a bracha before you ate your apple a day, right? I can eat an apple. Or I can say, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri ha'etz. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who creates fruit from a tree. And I can think about that. And I can think about, wow, the fact that there is such a thing as a tree that bears fruit that I can eat, that tastes that good, that keeps me alive, that gives me vitamins and nutrition and sustains me. That's insane. There are no trees on the moon. There's no trees on Mars. We haven't found another planet yet that has any. That doesn't mean there isn't any, but we haven't found one, and we're looking. And how grateful should we be that there are all kinds of trees that create all these different kinds of fruit that we can enjoy? How many different kinds of apples are there? From a Granny Smith to a Gallo to a Fuji. And so if I practice Judaism, what does that do? It not only cultivates a sense of awe and wonder and gratitude, and that amplifies the quality of my life, but what else does it do? Maybe I'll take better care of that tree. Maybe I'll take better care. Maybe I'll ensure that every human being has the right to an apple in the same way that I got to enjoy an apple. That there may be moral compulsion from that. And this is why Heschel was so enamored with the prophets, because he saw that the prophets were so soul-touched, so radically amazed at the injustices they saw in their world. For those of you who took the class we did last year on the prophets, right? They couldn't help themselves but scream at the injustices that they saw around them and all of the horrible things that people were doing to each other. Right? You can hear it in Isaiah on Yom Kippur morning. Is this the fast I look for you to daven like a drinking bird and then go and oppress your laborers? And that's not the fast I look for. I'm looking for a fast that unlocks the shackles of injustice and that drives you to feed the hungry and to clothe the naked and to render justice to those who are living in injustice, right? You can hear him scream it. And that's what's compelling him forward. And so when you think about this, right, I'm just sort of flying through some of these slides. I can always send you these if you want to, or you can read the introduction that's in there too. But I just want to read this one slide. The more deeply immersed I became in the thinking of the prophets, the more powerfully it became clear to me what the lives of the prophets sought to convey. That morally speaking, there is no limit to the concern one must feel for the suffering of human beings. There's no boundary that is sufficient. It also became clear to me that in regard to cruelties committed in the name of a free society, this is his famous thing, some are guilty while all are responsible.
Can you repeat and explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So in the Gaza Strip today, there are thousands of people who are not going to get enough food to satisfy them. They may have enough food to keep them alive, but they're not going to necessarily have enough food to satisfy them. Why is that?
War.
Right? There's a million different things that you could say. That's because of war. It's because of Hamas's very cynical way in which they steal aid and use aid as a weapon. It could be because of the limitations of a war zone and the provenance of aid. It could be because Israel has decided to limit aid until Hamas fulfills their commitments in the agreement they signed 2 days ago, that they would deliver not just some of the bodies of the hostages that they've held, but all of them, right? You could talk about a million things, right? But whose responsibility is it to ensure that everyone on the earth has enough to eat every day?
All of ours.
All of ours. It's all of ours. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that I have the agency to be able to fix it, right? But I can employ whatever agency I have to say, we need to solve that problem. And you saw it, right? When people in Israel began to realize that there was a very serious crisis of hunger in the late spring, you had people right, left, and center on television and in print and in the streets saying, we're not doing this strategy anymore. We have to go feed those people. Even if it means it's going to be harder for the IDF to do their job, even if it means it's going to delay the hostages coming home, there are certain moral lines we can't cross, and this is one of them. And then you started seeing a much greater provenance of aid going into that desperate place. And there's a million other things that are going on about that. But he's writing during the period of the Vietnam War. He's also writing during the period of the Civil Rights Movement. And he's seeing all of these injustices where you might say some people are the ones who are actually responsible for the injustice, But all of us collectively as a society are responsible for the society in which we live.
Then how do you rationalize that, like right in front of my building and everywhere in Florida, everywhere in the United States, there are people without homes, people without food, living right in front of us, and no one does anything. I've even asked police.
Right, the whole question of how do you deal with hunger in the world is a political problem. It isn't that the planet doesn't produce enough food every day for the 8 billion people on the planet to eat. And this has been true for 50 years, it's a political problem. But that political problem has to do with all kinds of social situations, right? That, range from mental illness
They
to,
just don't go, or they just don't, but there are excuses.
there's a million different, right?
They could have a.
What Heschel would say, to get back to our comment, right, because I'm not able to really answer that question, but what Heschel would say is, whether or not you know how to solve that problem, if it doesn't hurt you to see it, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And so I raise this because when you look at Michael Marmur's thought, he is deeply impacted by both of these major thinkers. He's trying to figure out, I'm a modern, I'm not letting go of my modern commitments, but there is a call to living in covenant with God that says observe Shabbat, keep some level of kashrut, put that jacket back at Filene's, even if it's a triple markdown, and not just the ritual commitments, but what else? The moral commitments of what it is to lead a Jewish life. Tzedek tirdof. So that's part of the reason he's also deeply enamored by Heschel, right? Because Heschel said modernity has the power to completely sap all of the spiritual wonder that can come from modern living. Don't surrender to it. Judaism is the pathway to rekindle and nurture it. Because if you can rekindle and nurture it, then the net result is you will then build a society that is more just, and you will build a society that is more holy, which is what the covenant of the Holy One of the Torah demands of us. So I know it's taken us a couple weeks to get through all this, but what the hell do you have to do? Right, but what we're gonna do in the next couple weeks is we're gonna look at the themes that he explores in his book, and then a couple of the letters that his book is structured around looking at each, this book is an acrostic. Each chapter is a letter of the alphabet of a different theme. They each stack and interweave with each other, but you can read them independently if you want to. He doesn't suggest it. He says one builds on the other if you want to know my whole thought, but if you just want to read a piece, you can just read a piece. So we're going to try to build a foundation so that when he's here and shares some of his letters, we know